I'm calling to order the meeting of the Water Supply Planning Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. It's September 2nd, 2025, and it is 2 p.m. Let's have a roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Here.
Director Paul,
Here.
and Director Lindor will be joining us shortly.
Good. Okay. So, any changes to the agenda?
Nope.
No? Okay. Then, let's see if is there any member of the public signed in, Sarah?
Yes, we have one member of the public and one staff member.
Oh, okay, thank you. So let's see if there is any public comment at this time. If you'd like to make a public comment, please let us know. Raise your hand if you're on Zoom, or what's the instructions? Press *6 to phone in. Is that right?
Yes.
Almost?
Chair Paul, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll get right to it. The first agenda item are the minutes from the last meeting. And I just noticed one missing word, which I was going to tell you in advance, but it's just a missing word to correct in the middle of the second page. Item 3, the sentence ends with favorable elements in the proposed, and I think what was meant was in the proposed decision. That was what was being discussed.
Okay.
So any other
Yes.
question?
I have one. It's very tiny, but it's got me present in the meeting. And when I read the second paragraph on the second page, it said the motion was approved by Paul, Lindor, and Edwards. I think that I was not there for that meeting.
So Director Edwards is the alternate, and he attended that meeting. Is that right?
That's what I think.
I will double check. It may have been that he was there
Okay.
in the beginning. But
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that is what happened, that he was there in the beginning and you joined later. But if you can look at your notes, Sarah,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah, I of course don't remember.
okay. Well, Sarah will check her notes and revise if needed. And with those expected changes, I move that we accept the minutes with those changes. And let's vote on that.
You need a second.
Second. If you need one, you've got it.
Got it. Okay. So,
Is there a roll call vote?
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Lindor, it's not arrived yet. Chair Paul.
yes, with the changes discussed.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now, the second item is on the PUC Phase 2 decision. Now final, that's voted out. Dave, do you want to
Yes.
present this one?
So this is primarily on here to just provide ready access to the full decision for people that may have an interest through our posting on the website.
Very useful.
54 pages to reach 4 simple conclusions, 2 of which actually have import. You may recall the proposed decision came out in May, and the PUC kicked the can down the road for 3 months and did not substantially change a thing based on all of those ex parte meetings and additional submittals. The 2 primary outcomes was the conclusion that demand would be 13,732 acre feet in the year 2050, and that available supply, inclusive of pure water Monterey expansion, but excluding a desal plant, would be 11,114 acre feet of available supply. What the PUC did not do is reach a determination of what today's demand is. So we will continue to use our 5-year average of production for customer service, which is 9,405 acre feet. Marina Coast Water District has a kind of a slightly lower starting point. CalAM's posted different numbers, but that is a verifiable number that we have as a 5-year average. I've included in the staff note a few of the minor items that the PUC missed. Many of them are tiny, a couple of them are significant. There's a 90 acre foot typo that worked against our direction. That's just a transposition of 2 digits, but it's now taken on a life of its own throughout the entire decision. The treatment of the in-lieu recharge program on Seaside Groundwater Basin was deemed to be a reduction in supply in both our testimony as well as CalAM's testimony. The point we were trying to clarify was that CalAM testified that when the desal plant comes on, they would start the in-lieu recharge program, which means until the desal plant comes online, that 700 acre feet per year has not really started. So that supply is available. I believe that when the expansion comes online, there's going to be some surplus water, which we'll see in the next agenda item. But the premise that the PUC adopted, that 700 acre feet is not available, has not begun yet. And so let's just consider that we have that water until we don't have that water, until the actual in-lieu program starts. And then finally, there were a number of smaller supplies where the PUC adopted numbers like 0 for the Malpaso supply and 94 acre feet for the Sand City supply, and no recognition of other water served by others, primarily the producers on the Seaside Basin, where wheeling agreements have been put into place. And we did point out in our meetings with the state water board members that, in fact, CalAM's own reporting to the state water board, the consolidated annual CDO report, actually shows numbers for those smaller supplies, and they're higher than 0 and higher than 94 acre feet per year. So there's a little bit of a difference between what's actually happening in reality versus what was forecasted as will happen by the PUC. But I think our approach at this point is, and we'll talk about it as I said under the next item, is let's accept these numbers as if true, recognizing that 5 interveners believe that there's still significant problems in them, and then focus on what these numbers mean relative to the cease and desist order. A couple of points.
Excuse me, Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to note for the record that Director Lindor has joined us, and Director Lindor, we're discussing item 2, the CPUC decision on supply and demand.
Thank you.
Item I wanted to point out, Marina Coast Water District, I believe, has voted to file an application for a rehearing, and has asked us to do similarly. And I told them we haven't agendized that, but we do have the matter as a closed session item at our September 15th board meeting. I don't know if that timeline works for an application for rehearing, and I'm not even sure a rehearing would be granted or if it would have any valuable outcomes for us. But I know that Fran has been in touch with Ruth Muzine at Marina Coast and Sarah Steck-Myers at the City of Marina to talk about different options for revisiting or even cleaning up or even getting rid of the typo. So we'll have that discussion in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, if it's 30 days, and I would have to check the rules again, but my memory is correct. It's 30 days from the time the decision was officially issued to
Right.
file an application for a hearing. So I'm sure Fran has checked those dates, so we'll know
Yeah.
if we need to make a decision before the next board meeting.
Exactly.
Excuse me, again, I'm sorry, Dave, but just for good record keeping, what was the current number that you said that we were going to use, that we're delivering?
Yeah, for existing demand, so where are we today? We've been showing a number of 9,405 acre feet.
Okay,
And
thank
then
you.
we've accepted the PUC's available supply number and their 2050 number. In multiple occasions, Mike's pointed out that the Caroline testimony that was even referred to by the PUC kind of runs from a 2030 number to the 2050 number. And just getting from where we are right now at that 9,405 to the 2030 number that the PUC had mentioned is a huge jump in growth in just a 4-year, 5-year period. So there's still some fiction in these numbers. But that being said, we're trying to kind of abide by the concept that a third-party regulator who's a sister agency to the State Water Board has done this work so that the State Water Board doesn't have to do it again and re-adjudicate the supply and demand numbers. And I think that they are pointing in the direction we want them to point. So again, we'll talk about that under item 3. That's it.
Thank you.
Director Lindor, Director Anderson, do you have questions or comments? So I'll say we will be discussing whether, as a board, at some point in the next few weeks, whether we want to file our own application for a hearing or join an application for a hearing with the other, with Marina Coast. And we're not ready to have that discussion here, but let's just all know there's something we'll need to consider and think through the end game. Yes, Director Anderson?
I do have a question. This came up a couple places here, but on this this summary, the numbered summary that we're just looking at, number 10 on page 58, it says it's unclear whether the AMBAG-RENA population estimates were or were not included in AMBAG's regional growth forecast. Since they had access to this, why didn't they just check it?
Yeah. So part of the issue there is what was written in various testimonies. And boy, I wish I had it. I have a page from the AMBAG-RENA that lays out the date and time schedule, and it's abundantly clear that they're all interrelated and were released at the same time. And by law, they have to be. Your regional growth forecast is on a 4-year cycle. The regional growth forecast gets kind of locked into place, and AMBAG will adopt a draft final regional forecast, so they can then use those numbers to do their 4-year metropolitan transportation plan and sustainable communities strategy. And that 4-year cycle kind of follows a little bit the draft final regional growth forecast, because they need the numbers for population and jobs and so forth to see how they impact transportation, so they can then see if we can absorb this growth with the transportation plan. And then the
Mhm.
regional housing needs allocation is on the 8-year cycle, and it works simultaneously with the 4-year cycle. And so it's written about in their own documents, AMBAG's own documents, but Cal-Am made statements in testimony, oh, well, the regional growth forecast came out before RENA did. Well, that's because they kind of locked the population forecast in place about a year and a half ahead of when they will adopt the final Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is almost simultaneous with adopting the housing plan. And so you're right to point out that the information was out there. And, I think in our ex parte meetings, we had an all hands meeting. We said, hold on now, they were available at the same time. But, that's how, you cast some doubt and it gets written, printed word, and then others pick up on it.
Mhm. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So, I mean, I don't want to say it is what it is, but this seems like a good argument for the desalination plant, the increase and all of that sort of stuff. Are we going to meet this new number?
Right. So in very simple terms, it is an argument for additional increment of supplies. If your 2050 demand exceeds your available supplies, then you have to go build something. I don't think any of us believe we're going to hit that 13,732 number or get anywhere close to it. We've kind of revisited what the 2018 decision said about having oversupply and what the allocation is between shareholders and ratepayers. And so we're kind of confronting those issues now separately in a document that's not quite ready for prime time. But, there are things in the original decision that said, hey, we're not saying you can build the expansion, but there may be circumstances that follow on later that would result in the PUC approving the expansion. Well, that's happened. But the 2018 decision goes on to say, but if you have a desal plant and the expansion, you need to come back and talk to us, the Public Utilities Commission, on how you intend to operate them to the benefit of ratepayers. So it's a little bit of, an allusion to risk allocation on what do you do if you've got oversupply in the system. So these numbers that the PUC has approved, no surprise, shows a deficit. If they were to actually have computed how much of a deficit they just committed to, it kind of points to about a 2 million gallon per day desal plant rather than the 4.8 or the 6.4 that was actually approved. But all they really did was say, oh, there's a deficit in the reasonably predictable future, therefore, on to the next step.
And that's going to be a very important question, your question, because does it make sense to build a desal plant that is 2 or 3 times the actual need?
Right.
And
Yeah.
And
And there's
and-
other things that we now have to kind of worry about when you look at the cost cap that was written in the 2018 final decision. They're almost at that number, in their own quarterly reporting and in their SEC 10K or 10Q filings. And so, it's highly likely that they're going to exceed the cost cap. Well, when are they going to file that petition for modification that the decision required? There's things we don't fully understand, how you can move forward on a project of this magnitude without all your permits in place. And there are more. There's others that we'll kind of put down in this comprehensive memo.
we should discuss these questions at board meeting soon, don't you think, Dave? I mean, because I, if CalM isn't moving, I mean, CalM, if I understand correctly, so far their position is they don't need to go back to the CPUC to move ahead with the desal plant. If that's the case, you know, maybe the other parties have to file a petition for modification to say, update the costs
Yep.
and answer these other important questions about the need. You know,
Agreed.
given the decision on what the gap between supply and demand is according to this recent decision, that has to be looked at again, the size and the costs. So maybe
Yep.
maybe we need to put that on an agenda for I don't know, agenda soon, I should think. Have you discussed that, Dave, with
Um,
the other
so I
party?
mentioned a document that Mike has seen that is still unfinished, and the goal was to try to get it all kind of wrapped and packed and ready for the 15th board
Uh-huh.
meeting.
Uh-huh.
How we begin to discuss about some of these issues. I agree that I think a petition for modification is the way to go, and then if it was denied, then maybe a complaint follows that. Because there's some real stuff that the problem with the 2018 decision, and it's not just the previous PUC decision, there's some other things related to the Coastal Commission conditions and Sigma in general that need some real thinking about. But the referral from the State Water Board, Office of the Hearing Officer, is, as best I can tell, is kind of solidly in agreement that the return water percentage could be 8 to 10%. Well, the 2018 decision had kind of a maximum of, I believe, 6%, and then declining with operations over time down to 1.5%. And so if there's a real risk day one that's agreed upon by the State Water Board that the return water percentage might be, close to double the worst it was expected to be in the review of the testimony and the EIR and the writing of the decision, maybe you want to go back and revisit that. I mean, there's a bunch of potential subsidies and damages that, it's almost like they're saying, well, go ahead and build it and then we'll fix all the mistakes later, instead of reviewing the go build it decision to kind of forestall those mistakes being made.
Excuse me, I don't
Yes,
understand what
Director Anderson.
I don't understand what the return water, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah. So a desal plant is pulling water through these slant wells, and it won't come in at the exact total dissolved solids of seawater, which implies that there's a freshwater component.
Okay.
And it's all just mixed.
Yeah.
The Salinas Basin is governed by what's called the Agency Act, and it says no groundwater can be exported out of the basin. So the way that CalAm has conjured up how to deal with that is to identify the freshwater percentage and deliver a like amount of fresh desalinated water to leave it in the Salinas Basin. So that's the return water. And that's the one that was kind of slated to be 6% initially, and then dropping, and then steadying out at 1.5% in long-term operations. And the modeling that was reviewed by the State Water Board in the referral seems to imply a much higher percentage.
Referral by the court.
By the
Yes.
the referral requested by the Superior Court.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was in the case that had to do with Marina, Coast and the city of Marine is concerned about the impact on their groundwater,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's that, and the status of that case is that,
It will go to trial in November.
okay. Yeah. I think it's time for us to update. This is related to our agenda item, update the status of the CalAM's compliance with the 20 conditions of the coastal permit. You're probably keeping track of this, Dave, but I haven't checked for a while.
Yeah, and some of those conditions are multiple. So condition 1 actually has like 7 different parties that have to issue a permit. Some of the conditions are just normal coastal commission conditions on, mitigation plans and so forth. So I have focused in on the ones that I think are more problematic, but there's several of those.
Yeah.
And to the chair, that item for the Coastal Commission is agendized tomorrow at the Water Master meeting, and CalAM will be speaking on it if anyone's interested in.
Oh
So the
yeah.
public can listen in, yes, to that meeting? Is that meeting open to the public?
It is, and it's a
I
hybrid
see.
meeting as well, so you can, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
How
I see
do we
Maureen
get
now.
access?
If
Where is it?
Well, I can say, or you can say, Dave.
Yeah. Can you just send the agenda to this group?
I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in the agenda is a link to the remote meeting.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good. I will try, if I can, I will listen in.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on this discussion item? The CPUC decision? Okay, discussion to be continued then, and let's go on to the next item. Well, let's see, we should check to see if there's any comments from the
public
public
comment.
on this item.
Chair Paul, I see no raised hands.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, now on to the next one, the status of the Pure Water Monterey expansion.
Yeah, this is really the status of the efforts to lift the cease and desist order is item 3.
Oh,
We have a brief presentation. So Mike and I have met with every state water board member and key staff twice now. First meetings were in May, and we told them at that time that we would be back after the Public Utilities Commission final decision is issued. And so we wrapped those up actually last Friday morning with a very good meeting with our final board member. What we told them at the first meetings was, here's our history, here's how we got here, and here's our current snapshot view of future supply and demand with the expansion. And our point is that we'll be able to demonstrate that there is no current violation. And so the key under the water code is current or threatened violation. And there's not much guidance as to what threatened means, unfortunately. So you have to kind of use an expectation of kind of human rule of thumb. But our point in these meetings is that we believe even with the PUC's decision, the case can be made that there's no immediate threatened violation of the rights on the river, and therefore no trespass. And our goal is to have them lift the most onerous parts of the CDO, that's the moratorium on setting of new meters primarily, but leave in place a CDO with reporting requirements and triggers and early warning systems and things like that. And so we're working on that now. The goal would be to file something towards the end of September. Michael and Dave Laredo haven't even had a chance to look at any documentation other than the cover letter. So we're going to need, a couple of weeks of real thorough review before we file anything. So I don't foresee it being any sooner. But Sarah, if you can bring up the PDF, and we'll just walk them through what the current conversations with the state board have been.
Are you not seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, I see the PowerPoint.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Yes, your PowerPoint on the
Oh.
There.
on the
Okay. Yeah, it was just my screenshot. Okay.
I don't see a PowerPoint. Let's see. I see Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Call for Action on State Water Board.
Yeah, that's the document. So it's
Okay,
really
it's text, mostly
really
text.
PDF. Yep.
Thank you.
And so this is a leave behind item. There's a 4-pager, and then there's a 2-pager. I've just put them all together in this PDF. But last week and the week before, our leave behind was, here's what we told you last time we met. Here's what the CPUC recently issued in their final decision, which we've already just talked about under item 2 in this packet. And then similarly, here's some of the things that they missed. So there's still just, kind of disagreement, but let's all accept the PUC numbers as if they're true. The little arrow chart, keep going, Sarah, on the second page is just, here's the process we'd like to go through. We'd like to get an answer by the end of the calendar year. We've been pretty well counseled that that's pretty unlikely to happen. They've got a very full agenda with Bay Delta hearings and so forth. But the gist of our conversation centered around 2 graphs. So let's go to the graphic. The first one is a polar bear eating vanilla ice cream in a snowstorm. Huh.
Oh,
Does it show up on the next page now?
no.
Huh.
Well, while Sarah is trying to get that up, I have a question, Dave, and it's about the
Mike-
supply.
Mike, maybe you can pull it up and see if you can screen share. Go ahead.
And this is about the supply and demand calculations, but in this context of lifting the CDO.
Right.
So the CPUC decision does not take into account storage period, but also storage added as a result of the years when the pure water expansion will create a surplus. So if we accepted the other numbers that were voted out in the PUC decision, but then calculated supply to account for the surplus water, when would demand actually exceed supply? How many years would it take?
That's great. And you've just kind of preempted what we're going to look at. So let's see what we have here.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. So
Good going.
So this slide, the blue line is the demand forecast. So its ending point is 13,732 acre feet in the year 2050. And its starting point is the 9,405, which is our 5-year average recent demand. The yellow line is stuck there at 11,114. That's available supply without the desal plant. So to Director Paul's point, in the early years, you've got that surplus where orange exceeds blue by quite a bit. And you can accumulate that over time. So you see those lines cross at 11 years. And part of the point that we've been talking, and I think we're getting a pretty good hearing so far, is, okay, 11 years is not imminent threat of trespass. And there's quite a bit of belief that that blue line might not even rise that quickly because it includes a lot of things like legal lots of record and some other stuff that we've kind of kicked around. So if we can find a way to lift the moratorium and then track real-time data. So as you finish a water year, you look back and you say, what was our prior year available supply and what was our prior year available demand? okay, if we, and this is just an example, it's not set in stone yet, but if you, with the passage of time, look back 5 years and have the trailing or lagging 5-year average growth rate, then you can say, okay, with that growth rate and where we are now at the end of this water year, would those lines cross at 5 years or longer? You know, what does our recent growth rate project relative to prior year demand and current year availability? So we'll try to build some triggers in with that warning system. And as long as Cal-Am says, hey, we're still building desal, it's right around the corner, we're going to break ground at the end of the year, or we're going to have all our permits in hand, then you don't have the typical California problem of, oh, we need a 10-year warning because it takes 10 years to design, build, permit, or design, permit, and build a new project. So it may be that 5 years is a reasonable look while the desal plant is still an option. But the place we're trying to get to is to get into real-time data, looking at what's actually happened and use that as an indicator for where we're going. So we no longer have to rely on these fantastical projections that you argue over in front of the PUC and no one really agrees on, but now you have the numbers. So this is what happens in a straight line with just those PUC numbers. But to the question Director Paul was asking, if you bank the surplus, you move that crossing point from 11 years out to 21 years. And the reason for that is you're adding the surplus, and you kind of see this parabola. You keep adding surplus, surplus, surplus. If in fact those lines were going to cross at the 11th year, now you've optimized your storage and you can make it another 10 years before your supply and demand cross. So the point to the State Water Board is optimizing storage, you've got 21 years, and this does not include additional storage that would go into ASR in a wet winter season. One would expect over 21 years, you're going to get probably 50% years where you're banking some good ASR.
Mhm.
So storage would even go up higher. But the idea or the statements that we made is, okay, so even with the PUC's numbers, the problem doesn't come home to roost until somewhere between the 11th year and the 21st year. That is not an imminent threat of violation. Therefore, if there's no current threat and hasn't been for 4 years, and there's no likely threat for the next 11 to 21 years, please take away the guardrails. Let's try to lift the moratorium, start building housing, and see what really happens. And so that's been the message to date. I don't know if you have the next page, Mike, with the bar charts.
So we would report annually on the actual supply and demand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
that's what happens. That's actually what happens right now is the end of the water year quarterly report becomes an annual report to the State Water Board. There we go, Sarah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, just for one moment, all the stored water that was on the two charts, that was just extra pure water Monterey water?
Yep, it was just taking the space between the yellow line and the blue line for the first several years and banking it. And there's no guarantee that that's how it would really happen.
Mhm.
So if there is in fact a surplus, there's a high degree of likelihood that Cal-Am would say, well, we paid for the pure water. We want the customers to pay for that. But we've had a surplus, so let's not take our native water and we'll leave that in the ground. Well, then de facto, you've already started your in lieu recharge program, even though you haven't built the desal plant, because you're not taking your native water that you're entitled to. That is in lieu recharge. So we don't really know how it's going to go down. So the one with the parabola is kind of optimizing all the storage, and it could end up somewhere in between.
Thank you.
So this chart is, since the early 1900s, the water supply available by source. So blue was directly from the river, yellow was pumped from wells along the river, red, which didn't even get started till the mid 50s, is the seaside groundwater basin. And the one thing that jumps out when it's bigger, or when you can see it, is for the last 4 years, there's a little purple bar on top of the last 4 years, which represents Pure Water Monterey, the base project. And so the message has been, look, the base project has done what it was designed to do. It allowed Cal-Am to get off of the river at or above its unlawful diversions. So it's now below its water right. And the other takeaway is, I think this chart, has a little line. That's, the line is at 11,114. So the other point we made is, like, this is how much the PUC says is available. We haven't been at that point for 12, 13 years. And in fact, our current usage is the same as it was in 1958. So the idea that we're going to suddenly, everybody's going to use 10% more water per capita per day because the desal plants come online that cost 50 to 60% more than current water, take those demand forecasts with a little grain of salt is the message, because nothing in history shows that we're likely to grow at the growth rate that's embedded in that blue line that the PUC approved. And then finally, the next page, we talk about conservation as a California way of life, has been around here on the Monterey Peninsula for 30 years. And when folks testify that, the onerous rules that are in place that dampen down water usage are going to go away when a desal plant comes online, is the furthest thing from the truth. These programs are not one-off programs that will get removed when a desal plant's built. They're staying. And a lot of it is built in to the technology. And current and future legislation is trying even harder to dampen future growth in residential water use and commercial water use. So, we spent a lot of time messaging that we're not going back there, and demand is unlikely to grow at this massively rapid pace that got approved in the PUC's numbers. But even if it did, there's no immediate threat of a violation. So, let my people go.
I think it's useful to, when these are talked about, to mention a few numbers, like the difference in an old washing machine versus a new one, or a dishwasher. Any of those things they're pretty dramatic.
Yeah, they're huge, especially the first one you pointed out. A typical old top-loading washing machine was 40 gallons per load. And we're down now with the front-loading high efficiencies about 7.5 to 9. And the thing we have going for us is those machines will eventually break. So even if you didn't want to move from your 40-gallon one, you're going to have to eventually.
Yeah, that information you just showed us is very well presented, very easy to understand. It's really well presented. Hopefully will make its point very effectively.
Yep. Now, we've been encouraged to try to bring California American into this effort. And, pretty much everybody understands the dynamic of what Cal-Am is saying versus what we're saying and so forth. But, we've been encouraged. And so we will reach out to Cal-Am to join us. There must be a way that they can continue to pursue their desal plant while also offering an olive branch to the chambers of commerce and the realtors and others who would like to see, every mayor and city council who would like to see the moratorium lifted. So I don't know. That's a difficult needle to thread, but as I said, we'll reach out.
So, so your thought is to propose to keep the desal plant as an option for maybe several years while we track actual supply and demand?
Yeah, I'm not wedded to keeping the desal plant alive. That's something that Cal-Am can work on. I guess I'm trying to, we are trying to get the message out that a decision to lift the cease and desist order is not a decision about the desal plant. That it's being pursued. It may be an option. If the PUC's numbers end up being true, then it's a welcome option, but it's not necessary for the lifting of the order.
Have we been started to think about alternative ways? Let's say we do need more supply 20 years from now, but not on the magnitude of the Cal-Am's plan, desal plan. Have we been thinking about possible ways to augment the supply, in proportion to the actual need?
Yeah, we've talked about a couple of scenarios, not the least of which is if we were to grow at the pace that kind of AMBAG population growth indicates, and the desal plant didn't occur, the expansion project would carry us for a very long time. But if it didn't, we could look at regional desal, but there's one more bite at the apple on winter wastewater too. So the question would then become, can you get the last couple thousand acre feet that's going out in the outfall? So that's one possibility. This whole issue of storage, though, really to the benefit makes the problem less onerous, because we're sitting on 6,700 acre feet of stored water right now, which is, it's not going to carry you a very long time. But if you can get that number up to 15, 20,000 acre feet, then you've got a lot of room for handling 3 dry years in a row, 4 dry years in a row. And even the data, and part of this data will be presented to the board, the State Water Board. John had one of his guys run historical end of year storage in the Carmel River and line it up against the type of water year. And what you see is, we've always talked about this, but you could have one good December, 2 great weeks or 3 great weeks in December, and you could end the water year as a dry year, but you've completely replenished the aquifer under the Carmel. And so when you have a full aquifer, you can have a dry year followed by a dry year, followed by a third dry year, and you still can pump your full legal water right because it's sitting there. And so you start to add in this element of storage and what it allows you to do. It becomes less of a supply availability problem and more a extraction production capability problem. And you've heard us talk about that in the past, where you need more wells.
Yeah.
And Dave, I just would point out that one more or additional bite of the apple as far as advanced water purification is that potentially you could seek to increase your efficiency. Instead of being at 81%, you could try to go to 88 or 89% to get more water that way too. So there's a couple of avenues that could be pursued from that side.
That's a great point. So that's what we've been up to. As I said, it's been very staff driven to date, but the attorneys need to get involved here shortly so we're going to have a formal application. Attachment 1 to that will be a red line version of the order itself. Attachment 2 to that will be some form of stipulation that some of the information reporting that was requested in Order 9510, the 2009 order, and even the 2016 order have been satisfied and don't need to be refiled every quarter. And that would help with some of the cleanup on reporting. And then we would seek support letters from local city councils, organizations, and then hope to get a hearing scheduled. We're not sure that a hearing is required if they wanted to administratively address this, but we're coming in as an aggrieved person under the water code, and that section of the water code seems to imply that a hearing is necessary. Mike and I need a follow-up meeting with their general counsel to clarify what the approach would be, but that's what we're working on.
Mhm.
Thank you for that, this
Yeah.
update. Very, very good. And I know Farina has joined us. I don't know how much of your presentation she heard, because I don't know exactly when she joined, but Fran, do you have any questions?
No, I got on
No.
about 5 minutes ago.
Oh,
The
okay.
internet came back up. So, but I have
Good.
heard the end of what
Yeah.
Dave was describing, which is a good
Uh-huh.
update with State Water Board.
Yeah, good. Welcome, Fran.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from directors or other comments from staff? If not, let's check and see if there's any members of the public that wish to comment.
Yes, Chair Paul, I have Susan Schiavone.
Welcome, Susan.
Hello, folks. I just want to say thank you for the hard work on this. It's really key that you're pursuing this, and I'm really happy that you're doing that work. And I do hope you'll be successful. And I'm so disappointed in the CPUC decision. And I hope there can be some sort of workaround on that one as well. So keep up the good work and thank you. I'm going to try to come to more meetings. I've been missing a lot lately. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan. We appreciate your support. Any other members of the public?
Chair Paul, I see
Okay.
no other raised hands.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that report. And now we will go up to, go on to the item 4 on the timeline of the expansion.
Yeah, and all of the activities on pure water expansion kind of speak for themselves in the staff report. But I did want to highlight the schedule. There's been little minuscule delays in getting to substantial completion at the advanced water purification facility. So you'll see a little blue triangle kind of out there in the late September time period. But the critical path on that one had fallen to the state water or regional water quality control board permit anyway. And that's the very long blue bar near the top that's carrying us out into October. So it's really that hearing will be kind of the last thing other than, punch list and closeout items, which exist on both the advanced water purification facility, which are the blue lines, as well as the injection well facilities, which are the green lines. But all in all, we're kind of on target. First water has gone into the 2 new injection wells as they were kind of being brought into production. We won't signal that we've met the start dates until we're kind of on a path for steady injection. What we're really keyed on is we do need to have a start date notification prior to February. And I don't see that as being a problem. And then to get to the full 5,750 per year, we have to do that within a year of February. So we're in a pretty good place.
and no problem getting in short notice, no problem getting the amount of water we need, the amount of wastewater we need to clean.
Doesn't seem to be. We've had a lot of discussion about how do we optimize better. There's some more that could be done on the reclamation ditch. Let's say there's some improvements in turning things on and keeping them running at a high capacity level, which, we'll have to see. I can guarantee you that they're going to have to run the overall bigger plant probably a little more attentively and a little harder than previously because they had a lot of spare capacity previously. So the level of spare or surplus capacity is definitely going to be reduced. But we're feeling pretty good. I'd like to see what happens in maybe 2 or 3 dry years when the rubber dam on the Salinas isn't up providing river water to the growers. But I've been reading a book on Apollo. It's kind of like you got to light the rocket and then see what happens. And so that's where we're at.
Dave, can you please remind me who owns the 2 new injection wells?
So they're owned by Monterey One Water.
Okay.
Injection well number 6 is the one that we kind of added to the mix and then got funding through an earmark in the governor's budget as a drought resiliency plan. So we kind of wanted the redundancy of having 6 wells, which I think is ultimately going to help us out because there's some hesitation at the Division of Drinking Water on fully leveraging the 4 wells that the project has. But yeah, that 6th was added because we were like, hey, if you can make water, let's put it in the ground, and that always will give you the drought protection of not having that 6th well. And then the 2 new extraction wells that are under Cal-Am's control are still slated for kind of second quarter of next year.
Thank you. Good. Any questions? All right. Well, this is all very good news. I guess for our next meeting, we'll probably want updates on all of the items that you updated us on today.
I have one comment, Chair Paul. For the minutes, Director Anderson was present, so it was just a typo that referenced Director Edwards in the motion.
And I forgot.
So, okay.
Me too.
Yeah. Thank you
man.
for straightening that out, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other comments on the agenda for our next meeting? Or related comments for the board to discuss on any of the items we've discussed?
No, but on a water supply, a couple of topics. There is a Fort Ord well that was going to go to Finance and Administration Committee for being destroyed. I think it's going to get delayed a month as John tries to get better bids. The ASR cooperative agreement has not moved since our last full board meeting. So I'll reconnect with Marina Coast Water District at some point and see how they might want to move that along. But that might be something to report back to this committee
Yes.
if we make any progress.
Yes, so thank you for that. So I had the impression that what needed to happen was that City of Seaside and Marina Coast Water District needed to talk. And do you know if that's happened?
I suspect that they're talking all the time and not seeing eye to eye, I think.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know that to be true, but that's kind of where it was at before. And a lot of that discussion that was alluded to really isn't our problem, nor does it affect the fundamentals of trying to do a cooperative agreement to make capacity available when it exists. But it certainly has all of the earmarks of a hot potato politically. So,
Yes, yes, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I would hope they could work it out so that all of their respective needs and concerns can be answered.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know enough about it to know why it's a problem, but I hope they can work it out. So it's, so all those concerns that we've heard about now are met.
Yep.
I think that's gonna need to happen for this to go anywhere is my personal impression.
It's a pretty solid impression.
Okay,
Okay.
if there's nothing else, then we will adjourn. Thank you very much for all the updates.
All right. Mike M., call me.
Bye.